Hello everyone, today we are going to be reading Lucky Strike Chapter 8, so let's get into it. Thank goodness it's Thursday, Jen said. She and Nate waited for the school bus beneath the tall pine crowned with a huge osprey nest. A nest is so big, the littlest of the Beam twins could curl up in it for a nap. I don't think I can take another day trying to explain string theory to my science teacher. She zipped and unzipped her backpack. I bet it's been a long week for you too. Nate shrugged. It hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. He'd gone the better part of a week without getting picked on, shoved around, or laughed at. Like a turtle barely inching its head from its shell, he almost looked forward to what the day would bring. Don't forget, we have to take flyers around town after school reminding people about the turtle rules. Every year, just before the loggerhead turtles arrived in the beaches to lay their eggs, Jen made it her mission to re-educate the good citizens of Paradise Beach about what not to do when the turtles came. Number 1, no outside lights after dark. Number 2, remove chairs, umbrellas, and other beach gear every day. Number 3, fill in holes and knock down sandcastles. Number 4, never ever disturb a turtle nest. Each point was dramatically illustrated by an artistically inclined twin, Ruth. Rebecca sorely wanted to write the rules in rhyming verse, but Jen refused on the grounds it would make the rules less serious. According to my calculations, based on the previous year's tides and water temperatures and the phases of the moon, the turtles should be arriving within the next 2 weeks or so. Jen felt the comfort of the steadfast turtles settle in her heart. Sure, Nate said. After all, did he have anything to do with other friends after school? No, he did not. Still, he wasn't thinking about nesting loggerheads, the turtle rules. No, he was thinking about how lucky the week had been. Jen, he said, I think getting struck by lightning changed something. Like what? Me. She cocked her head to one side. Explain, please. Nate fairly wiggled with relief to finally tell someone. You and I both know that I'm just purely unlucky. Jen pushed her glasses up on her nose. Nathaniel, how many times have I told you? The universe is random. Things are not all one way or the other. He held up his hand. Just hear me out. He took a deep breath. Ever since I got struck by lightning, lucky things have been happening to me. Like what? Well, for starters, the coin toss. Odds, she said. And then all the things that have been happening at school, not getting called on when I don't know the answers, not having to sit at lunch with Chum Bailey, all those things I told you. The bus pulled up. Before she could dismiss this evidence, Nate said, all in a rush, and what about the toaster and all the fishing trips Grandpa had since I got struck, and my brand new bicycle? Jen slung her Albert Einstein backpack on her shoulders and mounted the steps. Random coincidences, pure and simple. And I happen to know your grandfather got you that bicycle before the lightning struck your golf club. Nate followed Jen down the aisle of the bus. I don't see what the difference is between luck and coincidence, he grumbled. The face of Einstein, eyes wide with surprise and wonder, hair looking like it had a close brush with lightning too, seemed to nod in agreement from Jen's back. The kids snickered as they walked past. Jen frowned and said, Nathaniel, you weren't struck directly by lightning, which would have most likely killed you. Don't you think that's lucky enough? In PE that afternoon, Coach Hull blew his silver whistle. We're going to finish out the school year with my favorite pastime. Eating? Someone asked from the back of the class. Snickers and laughter rippled through the room. Coach's face burned red. He tried mightily to suck in his ample belly and tuck it behind his belt. No, smart Alec, he said. Baseball. Nate guessed it'd be a long time since Coach had actually been able to run the bases, but on the other hand, he himself had never been able to hit a ball. It was Coach Hull's theory that Nate and the bat and the ball did not speak the same language. Outside, Coach divided the class into teams. Ricky Sands had grown when Nate was assigned to his team, just like he always did. But it did seem to him that Ricky didn't protest quite as loudly as before. Still, Ricky gave Nate the oldest ball mitt in the bunch and sent him to the far outfield, almost to the bay side of the peninsula. He wished just once he'd get a turn in the infield like everybody else. Nate trotted to the far, far outfield and squinted in the sun as he watched the sky for clouds. Was that a rumble he heard off in the distance, or was it his stomach? There were, in fact, clouds billowing out over the gulf. He shivered, and then he heard it. Crack! He dropped to the ground like he'd been shot and covered his head with his arms. Nate! Nate! Catch it! He uncovered his head and looked up. High against the blue sky, a white baseball arced lazily. The ball spun over and over, just hanging above his head, like it had all the time in the world. Catch it, Sparky! Ricky Sands screamed from the pitcher's mound. Nate didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the idea that he, Nate Harlow, could catch a fly ball. But then a tingling and buzzing burned in his arm and hand. Certainty filled him like a balloon. He jumped to his feet and locked his eyes on that ball. He stretched his arm high and opened the palm of his mitt, and just like a homing pigeon returning to its long-lost roost, the ball dropped and settled pretty as you please in the cup of the leather mitt. Nate gasped and stared bug-eyed at the white ball. He held the ball aloft, his arm still vibrating for everyone to see. I caught it, he whispered hoarsely. Then he yelled and yipped, I caught it! I caught it! Mouths dropped open in disbelief, gulls stopped their cries, and the wind stopped its humming. The silver whistle dropped from Coach Hull's mouth. Ricky Sands leapt off the pitcher's mound and let out a whoop that could be heard all the way to the Florida-Alabama state line. Coach stuffed the whistle back in his mouth and blew. Out! He cried, out! Ricky struck out 2 more players in no time. The team switched sides. Mary Beth Malloy, otherwise known as Jinx, strutted to the pitcher's mound. She flipped her red braids over her shoulders and popped her gum. Jinx Malloy was not only the best clarinet player in the school band, she had the meanest, snakiest knuckleball all of Liza P. Woods Elementary. We're sunk, Ricky Sands moaned. First, she struck out Chum Bailey, which was not a hard thing to do. Next, she struck out Ricky, which was near to impossible. His second swing went wild and sent the ball in an unfortunate direction, and his third missed the ball by a mile. Out! Cried Coach Hull. Ricky threw his cap to the sand. Next came Nate. He crept up to the plate, gingerly holding the bat in his good hand. Let's just hope the bell rings for the next class before she strikes him out, someone said behind him. And normally he would have agreed. His chances of hitting the ball were about once in a blue moon, but hitting it one-handed with his left hand, it would take nothing short of a miracle. But this time, something felt different. He paid no attention as Jinx Malloy grinned like a cat about to eat a wingless canary. He didn't listen to as his teammates muttered, "It's all over now," and gathered up their books in packs. No, he paid no mind to any of this. All he was aware of under that April sun was the conversation between the ball he smacked against Jinx's gloves and the bat fairly dancing with anticipation in his good hand. Nate unhunched his shoulders, stood up straight as an arrow, and grinned right back at Jinx. "Show me what you got," he called. He didn't even remember swinging the bat. The next thing he knew, he heard a crack, loud as the 4th of July firecracker. The ball sailed higher and higher into the sky, over Jinx Malloy's upturned face, over the first baseman, and the outfielders. It hovered there for a second as if trying to make up its mind what to do. "The ball got a second wind, I guess," he later told Jim. It gathered itself up and sailed over the chain-link fence and out of sight. Later, folks claimed it was that same baseball that broke out the windshield of a brand-new 1992 red Ford pickup in the Crystal Sands new and used car lot. "Run, Sparky, run!" Ricky Sands hollered. Nate dropped the bat and sprinted from base to base, his grin getting bigger with every sandbag he passed. Jinx threw her hat and her glove to the ground. By the time he strutted home, everyone on his team was clapping and chanting, "Sparky! Sparky!" There were high fives all around. Nate puffed out his scrawny chest. Being lucky sure felt good. "I'm telling you, Jen," he said as they walked to their bus after school. "It was like magic. It was like someone had cast a spell over the ball and bat." She rolled her eyes. "There's no such thing as magic, and you know it." "Yeah, but—" Jen ignored him. "It's not beyond the realm of possibility you could hit a home run." Then he was just about to remind her he'd rarely hit a ball at all, much less a home run with one hand, when someone called his name. "Hey, Sparky," Ricky Sands said, clapping him so hard on the shoulder he stumbled. "A bunch of us were getting up a baseball game over at Billy Bowleg's park. Want to come?" Nate's mouth fell open. No one had ever invited him to do anything after school. No one except Jen, that is. Nate looked from Ricky to Jen. Ricky gave Nate a shake. "Don't know what kind of magic possessed you out in that baseball field today, Sparky, but let's see if you still got it." Jen pushed her tilty glasses up on her nose and frowned. "Nathaniel and I have to pass out the turtle rules today," she said, not looking at Ricky or Nate, but at the space between them. Ricky snorted. "Let's see. Your choices are play baseball with us or go with her," he snorted again. "Tough choice, Sparks." Jen frowned. "I beg to differ. Nathaniel is well aware of the gravity and importance of making sure the beaches are copacetic for the needs of the loggerhead turtles." "Whoa!" Ricky held up his hands to stop the onslaught of words. "I don't know what the heck you're yammering on about, Brainiac, but I'm talking baseball here." Jen stepped closer to Nate. "Nathaniel appreciates how important the return and survival of the turtles is, much more so than some game." She looked at him. "They need us, right?" Nate looked from Jen to Ricky, from Ricky to Jen. "You're a weirdo," Ricky said, pointing at Nate. He said, "And you're even more of a loser than I thought, if you want to hang out with her and a bunch of turtles." Ricky strode off through the crowd. "Well, enough of that dunderhead," Jen said. "Let's divide up the flyers and—" "Geez Louise, Jen," Nate exploded. Jen took a step back. Why can't you just once act like a normal person?" And before Jen could answer, he sprinted off. "Wait up, Ricky," he called. "Wait for me." Jen's eyes swam behind her glasses. Her nose dripped. One hand worked at an eyebrow, while the other hand stroked the face of Albert Einstein. Never ever, in all the years she had known Nate Harlow, had he yelled at her. She climbed the steps into the school bus and took the very last seat in the back, the seat she always sat in with Nate. She looked out the nose-smudged windows. There, just there, she saw him, Nate trotting beside Ricky Sands, trying his level best to keep up with the taller boy's longer strides. Ricky said something and elbowed Nate in the side. Nate laughed and glanced back toward the bus. He had deserted her. Jen watched him grow smaller and smaller as the bus left the school and boy behind. Her heart was as heavy as the Beam family Bible locked away in her great-grandmother's cedar chest. She leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes. Why had he gone with Ricky Sands when they always handed out turtle rules together? He knew it was important, and why had he yelled at her and said that thing about acting like a normal person? She was being who she always has been, and he'd always understood. They'd always stuck together through thick and through thin, no matter what. She gazed into the wide, surprised eyes of Albert Einstein on the back of her pack. She understood advanced physics and finer points of trigonometry, but she would never understand the workings of people's emotions. Jen's mama set out a plate of cookies and a glass of milk for her daughter. She sat down across the small kitchen table from her and asked what she always did. "How was your day, sugar?" Mrs. Beam folded her hands and waited for the usual complaints about the questionable quality of public education and the lack of edible choices in the cafeteria. Instead, Jen asked, "Mama, do you believe in luck?" Mrs. Beam blinked in surprise. She smoothed her dark hair and said, "Why, that's an interesting question, honey. I'm not sure. Your father says everything is God's will and part of God's plan, and my mama said everything happens for a reason." Her voice trailed off. On the other hand, it does sometimes seem like some folks are just born lucky and others are born unlucky. Like Nathaniel? Jen said. Before Mama could answer, she said, Nathaniel says ever since he got struck by lightning, his luck has changed. He thinks he's gone from unlucky to lucky. Mrs. Beam said. I keep telling him there's no such thing as luck, good or bad, she said, without her usual conviction. Although, she mused, it is an interesting theory, and it does seem things have been going his way. Really? But that could just be self-fulfilling prophecy, couldn't it, Mama? I mean, because he thinks he's lucky, he has to succeed more, right? Well, that could be, honey. Maybe he's gotten more self-confidence because he believes his luck has changed. And you and I both know Nate never had an abundance of self-confidence. But on the other hand, how do you prove the difference between the power of belief and the magic of luck? Jen's eyes widened. She jumped up from the table, knocking her chair backwards. That's it, Mama. Why didn't I think of it myself? Every scientific theory must be tested, retested, and proved. She threw her arms around her mother's neck. You're a genius, Mama. All right, that's it for Chapter 8. We will read Chapter 9 next time. See you then.